Now we go back for a minute to the infinite way. And we see, well, first of all, we see that it's going to be necessary to read very carefully the Sermon on the Mount in your Bible. And note particularly what the Master says when he says, "Ye have heard it said of old." And then you will know that he is not talking about his new dispensation, that he is talking about what was taught of old, but which you must rise above, overcome, in order to understand, "But I say unto you." This is my teaching, not the old teaching. My teaching, my kingdom is resist not evil, and so forth and so on, all the way down the line. At first, as you read that, "But I say unto you," you will probably agree with the religionists of today who say it isn't practical, you cannot live that kind of a life today. And of course, they have no way of proving that because they haven't tried it. That is now also becoming a very, well, much of a cliche, that don't blame Christianity for the failure of the world because it hasn't been tried yet. Certainly that part of Christianity hasn't been tried, even from the very beginning. If it were, in these 2,000 years, we would have risen above the need for these organizations. Don't misunderstand that. The infinite way will not do away with churches. Eventually, churches will begin to discern what the newer teachings are revealing. The churches will be as much different in the future as they are now different from what they were before the days of Ingersoll. Eventually, everyone rises above the need for church or organization, but that may not necessarily be in this age or this era, may not be in this century or the next century, although it is happening with individuals as they begin to perceive that the Master taught an individual life, a life built on conscious union with God. Then they begin to understand why he said, "No longer will you worship in this holy mountain, nor yet in that temple in Jerusalem." You'll understand that the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. At the beginning of World War II, I wrote a series of articles based on a popular phrase of the day, or sentence, or thought, idea. What can I do? That is, what can I do to help the country in this war? And I wrote a series of articles on the fact that we can pray. We may not have time to go to church. We may be so busy with housework or war work or something else that we can pray, and this article went on to show how we could pray, driving to work or going in a bus or streetcar, doing housework or whatever, and what the nature of that prayer would be. And I took it to the editor of a very large newspaper, and at first reading he fell in love with it. That this is what I've always looked for, what I've always believed, that there can be this kind of a religion. How many of these articles can you write? Well, after you have the pattern, you know, how many Fords can you turn out? So he wanted me to do one a day, 5 a week for the duration of the war. And you know now that was a very easy thing to do. So he told me to come back 2 days later and he would have the contract ready for me. But when I went back 2 days later, he had to tell me the sad news that the board of directors of the paper couldn't accept it because the church objected to anyone being told they could pray outside of a church. You must come to church to pray. Now you see, the Master says, neither in this holy mountain nor yet in Jerusalem, in that holy temple. And of course he did offend the Hebrews. That's why one of the reasons he was martyred. That temple was built on tithes, on income, on attendance. And to tell people they didn't have to go there and didn't have to tithe was really destroying the competitor's business. Well, let us understand this then, that the time does come to individuals when they can take their spiritual worship all by themselves, require no companions on the path, no association, no memberships, no church activities. But that isn't for all people at this present time. There are people who feel much more progress in their work when they have others to study with, to work with, to meet with, and even the very act of doing church work helps people to progress. And so our work is not aimed at destroying churches, although we certainly do hope that the churches will include in their work some of these principles that we are here talking about. And as you know, that is coming about also. Those of you who have been receiving the monthly letter know that the art of meditation has been recommended to the Protestants of all denominations in the United States and in Canada. It is recommended reading. And that the book itself is on sale in many bookshops and bookshelves of Protestant churches. And so a whole new readership is developing, because as they find the art of meditation, they see in it that this author also wrote Practicing the Presence or the Infinite Way, and they decide to investigate that. And so the principles of the Infinite Way are very slowly reaching people inside the Orthodox Church. And it certainly is not our hope, wish, or desire that it separate them from their church, but that they be enabled to bring into their church some of these principles. Now, I started to tell you that the beginning of all this work was the realization that healing work is not based on a power that destroys sin, disease, death, lack, or limitation. It is not based on two powers struggling with each other. And as revelation followed revelation, unfoldment followed unfoldment, this ultimately came. The entire human scene is the operation of one power over another, one power destroying another, one power overcoming another, always resorting to some power to do something to some other power. And when metaphysical and mental healing began, it began on that basis of truth overcoming error, the immortal destroying the mortal, the real doing away with the unreal, so that the two, good and evil, were still perpetuated. Now, come with me for just a few minutes into an inner unfoldment, an inner stillness, in which you are not going to resort to any power to do anything. You are going to resist not evil. You are going to be still and let evil do anything it wants. You will not deny it. You will not affirm it. You will not seek God. You will not fear a devil. Sit at peace. Be still. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. Can you imagine the enormity of that statement? In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. No struggle, no strife, no battle. Quietness and confidence. The Lord is my shepherd. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He setteth a table before me in the wilderness. He performeth that which is given me to do. He perfecteth that which concerneth me. I shall not fear what mortal conditions can do to me. I and my Father are one. In Him I live, move, and have my being. His grace is my sufficiency in all things. Be still. He may not fight. The battle is not yours. Be still. Be still and know. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. No fight, no strife, no struggle. Peace. Peace, peace. My peace give I unto thee. My peace, not as the world giveth. Not as the world giveth. Not a peace that comes from destroying your neighboring country, neighboring people. Not a peace that comes from having atomic bombs. Not as the world giveth, give I unto thee. My peace. Nothing shall destroy thee. Nothing shall harm thee. For there is nothing but peace. The lion and the lamb shall lie down together. Peace. Be still. Put up thy sword, Peter. Put up thy defense. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. Even a mental sword, put it up. Stop defending yourself. This is not power. This is not evil. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. In every prayer, in every meditation, in every treatment, remind yourself. Put up thy sword, Peter. Don't argue. Don't refute. Don't defend. Don't protect. Put up that sword, mental sword. Be at peace. My peace give I unto thee. I shall not fear what mortal man can do to me, for that's but belief. Belief, not power. Belief hurts only the believer. Put up thy sword. And quietness and confidence shall be thy strength. God's grace is thy sufficiency. All right, now that was the original revelation that started this whole career that resulted in the infinite way. The realization that you are still in the human world. Whether you heal with medicine or whether you heal with thoughts, you're still in the realm of physical healing. But the moment that you give no power to the condition, no power to the circumstance, and understand that in that moment you are at the point of spiritual healing, but you're also at the point of spiritual living, because now you have no fear of the conditions of the world. It's a very strange state of consciousness for the human to understand. I'm thinking now of a man who was a very great man in England, and this was during just before World War II, when things were pretty chaotic over there and the umbrella was still flying, and conditions were dangerous. And the man said to this great one, "You don't seem to be disturbed by the things that are threatening our country today or the world." And this man answered, "My kingdom is not of this world." And you can imagine how that was misunderstood by everybody to whom it was repeated. As much as to say, "I don't care what happens to my country or to the world." But you know, he didn't mean that. He meant this, that we're talking about. My kingdom is not of this world, and so I cannot use the world's weapons. I must use the spiritual weapon, which isn't a weapon at all. It's a realization. And there came the second unfoldment that resulted in the infinite way. The word realization. The only treatment, the only prayer, the only meditation, the only weapon we have is that one word, realization. When you are in prayer or meditation, regardless of what you think, regardless of what thoughts come to you, you are only in the process until the moment of realization comes, and in that moment of realization there is what we call healing or redemption, whatever the nature of the God's grace must be. The words we speak are not power. The thoughts we think are not power. But if I sit in this quiet and I allow myself to think such thoughts as peace, be still, The victory is to be achieved not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit. I'm not seeking for a power to destroy something. Oh no, thy grace, Father, thy grace is my sufficiency. Thy presence is a lamp unto my feet. Thy peace passeth understanding. In thy presence is fullness of life. As I sit contemplating these spiritual truths, which is a form of meditation, eventually I arrive at a place where thoughts do not come anymore, or perhaps I've thought all the thoughts along that line that I know. And so I just sit quietly, peacefully, and in a moment or two or three or four or five, I begin to feel this inner peace that is called realization. And that realization is the demonstration. Now you see, I haven't known any deep metaphysics. I haven't known any deep wisdoms. I haven't gone around knowing a lot of great knowledge that's hidden from the world. I have done nothing but take our Master literally at his word that I need not fight evil. I need only seek the kingdom or the inner peace, and then all these things are granted unto me. That's the whole secret of this message. You must know that if there is such an entity or identity as the infinite way, and if it has spread around the world, it must have certain principles by which it is known, certain principles that identify it, certain principles that set it apart. And these are they. This really constitutes what we call the message of the infinite way. The Master taken literally at his word, and then the development of a state of consciousness that enables us to live it. Now, of course the mortals can't live it, the humans can't live it. We couldn't if we had tried it at the earliest stages of our metaphysical or spiritual search. It is only through our constant reading, pondering, meditating, contemplating, that ultimately we develop the consciousness of the truth that we read and speak. That's why it is a very painful thing for me sometimes to hear students mouthing these wonderful, beautiful truths, knowing how far they are from actually embracing them within themselves and living them. It is far better when called on for help, for any reason, to just say, I will give it to you, and know these things within yourself, rather than to voice them outwardly or openly, because they do not strike well on the unprepared thought. The things of God are foolishness unto man, never doubt that. And when you tell these simple yet supreme truths to anyone, you must expect that they will not understand them, that they will actually misunderstand them, and misunderstand the meaning that you have in them. So it is much better to say, let me help you. Yes, I will pray for you, or I'll take up work for you, and then go into your own silence, and there remember these things within. Don't anger the mortal mind or antagonize it. Don't resist evil. Sit back and be at peace. In the human world, they have two powers, and they have a sword to protect themselves. In the mental realm, they have thoughts that are power. But in the spiritual realm, we don't have any power. We have only the grace of God, which fills us. We don't need any power. God's in his heaven. All's well with this world. But only to those who are in that divine state of consciousness. To the others, the human mind is causing a turmoil. And you watch this, that as a rule, when error is presented, any form, evil in any form, is presented to your thought, there's a resistance in you to it. You set up a wall against it. And you see, in that you lose the opportunity to make the demonstration, because you don't need a wall. That wall that you set up is your mental sword. The Master said to Peter, put up thy sword. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. Don't put up a defense against evil. Don't put up a wall against it. Understand within your own being that evil has no power. Nothing is power, not even the good things are power. All good is in spirit or consciousness, not in the things that consciousness produces. That's answering a question. You say there are no properties of good or evil in things. Yet when we are aware of our spiritual center, this awareness flows out as harmonious purse, health, or business. Yes, but that doesn't make the purse, health, or business good. It makes the awareness, the consciousness, the good. The thing is only the thing of the moment. And it makes no difference what it is. It has no qualities of good. It may have qualities of usefulness. It may have qualities of beauty. We can't look at flowers and say they're not beautiful. We can't look at money and say it isn't practical and useful. But that doesn't make it good. That merely makes these things beautiful or needful, practical, useful, harmonious. The good is in the essence of our own consciousness, because the good can produce and does produce the forms of good. So it is with God. When you demonstrate the presence of God, you will have things. But if you try to demonstrate things, you'll have a headache before you get through. And you'll be very lucky if it's only a headache. Never try to demonstrate persons or things, because you may get them and rue it. But center your attention on demonstrating a realization of God's presence. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Demonstrate the Spirit of the Lord. Demonstrate the realization of God's presence, and you'll find that that presence will appear tangibly as every form needful to your experience. But that doesn't make the form good. That makes the consciousness that brought it forth good. Now, you remember last night, mind forms its own conditions of body, of form. Mind forms itself and governs itself as matter. And that brings you back to what we said earlier this evening, that the product of the mind appears as form. So if you have evil in your mind, it appears as evil form. If you have good in the mind, it appears as good in form. This is all on the level, not of spirit, but of the second creation. Now, on the level of cosmic law, then, a mind filled with good thoughts, charity, purity, benevolence, cooperativeness, must appear outwardly in some measure of good living, whereas a mind filled with fear, hate, injustice, lust, malice must appear as outer forms of inharmony and discord. That is what ye have heard of old, the cosmic law. But now I say unto you this: my mind, imbued with truth, spiritual truth, is the law of resurrection, renewal, regeneration, restoration. My mind, imbued with truth, is the mind of those who come to me and to those embraced in my consciousness. My mind imbued with truth is the mind of individual being. There is where grace begins to appear in your experience, not by trying to demonstrate something, merely by filling your mind with spiritual truth, not for the purpose of demonstration, for the purpose only of ye shall know the truth, of living in the secret place of the Most High. Those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High, none of these evils shall come nigh their dwelling place. This is a law. This is an absolute law, that if you dwell with spiritual truth in your consciousness, that none of the evils of this world will come nigh thy dwelling place. That doesn't set aside the fact that on this spiritual path we have trials and tribulations, because those are stepping stones in our spiritual growth and unfoldment. But here is the way. My mind, imbued with truth. You see, I don't have to get rid of a mind. I don't have to overcome mortal mind. I don't have to destroy it. I have to understand that my mind is an instrument for my soul, and the means of it is filling my mind with spiritual truth and grace. My mind, imbued with truth, is the law of resurrection, renewal, regeneration, restoration. Anyone in this room who has ever been the means of any spiritual healing knows that this is the truth, that their own individual mind, as it is filled with truth, becomes a law of renewal, of regeneration, of reformation, of physical, mental, moral, and financial healing to those who come to them. Now, anyone that has been spiritually guided to come to this class has enough of the spiritual instinct developed in them, or they couldn't sit here through these works, to fill their mind so full of spiritual truth that their mind becomes imbued with it, endowed with it, and that truth in consciousness takes over and begins to live your life. At first it works this way. You fill your mind with spiritual truth, not with a truth that's going to overcome something or do something, just truth, filling it with truth. I and my Father are one. God's grace is my sufficiency. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Living in that atmosphere, filling consciousness with these truths for a certain length of time, and the time differs with each one, there comes a specific day, a specific moment, when that truth takes over the mind. And no longer does the mind act to fill itself with truth, but truth acts to keep the mind continuously in tune with the infinite. And from then on, the flow is the other way. It isn't you thinking truth, remembering truth, declaring truth, and meditating on truth. It is truth using your consciousness for its expression. You almost become like a state of vacuum or listening, and it always is using you. It is flowing through you. You couldn't possibly think sublime truths any more than I could make up this that we're hearing as we go along. You know that no man, no woman that ever lived could make up these things. They are coming from somewhere. They are coming through. I am but an instrument through which they're flowing. That's why so often it's so painful for me. I can't get myself out of the way, and it pushes. But at last it succeeds, and then it starts to come through. And I don't think these truths think themselves or push themselves through me. And so it is when I'm called on for help in any wise. I never give a treatment. Incidentally, I never did. I sit quietly and let truth use me. It expresses itself through me. I don't even answer your letters when they come unless I've sat back in meditation to find out what it wants to say, and then I merely write it down. It is an actual, literal truth that I am but a servant, an instrument that is being used. I am definitely nothing of myself, and incidentally, I don't know these things of myself. These are things that are coming through. Now, they're coming through not from some person, but from the center of my being. I think it's a fulfillment of Browning's statement that truth is within ourselves. We must open out a way. Now, as I succeed in getting quiet inside, the way is opened and it begins to flow. But it doesn't only flow as words. Just remember this, that when I'm in the silence, there are no words, but it's flowing out into space as the Spirit of truth, as the Spirit of God, and see what it does. It brings you here from all over the world. It brings 5,000 families every day to the reading of the monthly letter. It brings even the Protestant churches into the reading. I can't. And no money is being spent for advertising or promotion, and no organization is behind it. It is the Spirit itself let loose in the world. And that's the way you are in the help that you give your family, your friends, your community, or your nation. Don't for a minute think that you know anything about truth, or that if you did, that it would do you any good. I'm reminded of the story of a man who went to Tibet to visit with the great masters, and after quite a few wonderful experiences, he finally met one of the greatest of all the masters of Tibet. And almost immediately the master voiced some great truth. It was only a sentence, but it was a very profound thing. And this man, of course, wasn't going to let that master think that he didn't know it all. So he began to explain the statement to the master and went on for 4 pages of the book, so that the master would be sure to know that he really knew it all before he got there. And when he got through, the master just looked at him and said, "Yes, that's all true. But isn't it wonderful to know that it wouldn't make any difference if it weren't?" And so be very careful, because actually all the words of truth you hear and all the words you read, if they are of truth, they are of truth. But really it wouldn't make any difference if they weren't. If you could just attain enough silence, you wouldn't have to know any of those truths. You wouldn't have to care about them. You wouldn't have to read any books, because the Spirit of truth itself is our freedom and our liberation, even when not accompanied by words. The Master indicated that when he said, "A little child shall lead them." You have to come as little children in order to understand, not with profound words of wisdom, but with the simplicity of a child. And what more is there to this message than the simplicity that any child can understand, that as ye sow, so shall ye reap. But if you want to get away from that, drop your sword, drop your mental defenses, stop resisting, and get into the Spirit of God, or let the Spirit of God into you, and then be willing for it to flow in forgiveness. You can tell what progress you're making. Is it easier to forgive? Is it easier to withhold judgment, criticism, condemnation? Is it easier to love? Is it easier to be less bigoted, biased, prejudiced? Is it getting easier to have periods of inner peace and silence? That's the only way you know your progress. You don't know them by outer conditions, because the world's estimate of progress is wealth and palaces and yachts and power and positions in life. But that's not necessarily the spiritual measurement of progress. Some of the greatest spiritual lights have had the least of earthly goods. Of course, some people would say they made a poor demonstration. Don't you believe it? Their demonstration was spiritual, and it wasn't necessary to be burdened with the things of this world. You must remember that most of the even temporal things that become necessary to us on this path are not necessary to us for our own sakes, but for the use of the work. That is where the necessity comes in. It isn't that the person on the spiritual path has so many things that they need or require, except those things that they need or require in the furtherance of their work and mission. So you can't judge of your spiritual development by the amount of people who follow you or the amount of dollars that they pay you. That's no sign. One sign is if there is a sufficiency on hand for all the normal, natural demands that are made upon you. If they aren't, it's because you aren't high enough yet in spiritual consciousness, because when one has dropped the sword and settled back into an inner peace, there is a source of supply that continuously flows to meet our normal, natural needs. I don't think it takes thought of tomorrow as to whether there's going to be a depression or not. I think it takes thought of our immediate needs, but incidentally in its working, there's no limitation of that kind. There are always 12 baskets full left over to share. So that mind must always form its external appearance. As ye sow mentally, so shall ye reap physically. But rising above that, a mind, my mind, imbued with spiritual truth, becomes the instrument through which God appears, in which God manifests, and through which, and God appearing becomes the body of my outer world, so that never do I live in a material world with material surroundings. God itself, truth in my consciousness, is the very substance and essence even of the loaves and fishes, and that's why they can be multiplied, because they are not matter, they are not material. Once mind becomes permeated and imbued with truth, truth becomes the substance and the essence of all form, and then the form is seen to multiply because it isn't matter. It doesn't divide, it multiplies. Matter is only matter in the material state of consciousness. Once one rises to a mental state, it is seen that matter isn't matter at all, it's mind, and that a process of mind changes the product matter. But then when spiritual truth comes along, it becomes evident that the soul becomes the activity of the mind and appears as form, and then all form is spiritual and can be multiplied. That brings us to another question. It can be understood why a mature person does not progress due to their materialism, but why the death and suffering of a small child? And the answer is twofold. First of all, the child is not, as an infant, a realized spiritual identity, and therefore it is not living a life of its own. Its life is being lived by its parents and by the beliefs of the world surrounding it. Every child, the minute it's conceived, is under the law. And being under the law, it is subject to both good or evil. It can be born as a perfectly humanly normal, natural child. It can be born completely deformed, mentally or physically, because of certain material conditions or beliefs that say so. Now, anybody's child may be perfect, and anyone's child may be imperfect. There have been just as many bad children come out of wealthy homes and cultured homes as have come out of the slums. And the reason is that the law of matter and the law of mind is operating. The only ones who can assure themselves that their children will not be born in accord with the law of good and evil are those who have themselves attained the higher realms of consciousness, and they will bring forth children after the image and likeness of their state of consciousness rather than of the state of consciousness of the world. In other words, the average couple conceive children and then, of course, have no government or control over what happens. They just stand by and wait 9 months to see what's going to happen, and it happens in accord with whatever laws of good or evil happen to be in operation in prenatal history or parental history or environment or accident and so forth. But those who are spiritually alert never let that happen. They know before conception that they're not bringing forth matter or mind, but that their life is being lived in spirit, truth, and love, and that the only creative principle is not man but the Spirit of God in man. And then learning to live without the sword, but in this inner stillness and inner peace, whatever they bring forth has to be the image and likeness of their state of consciousness, not their grandparents or their parents or their neighbors or their race or their religion or their condition of servitude. Ordinarily, births are accidental. They're the product of surroundings, and the parents have had no control over the situation at all. But in spiritual understanding, parents will know what they're doing when their children are conceived. And they'll know right well that they're not being conceived just for their pleasure, nor by accident, but that as a product of their conscious union with God, there must be the unfolding of the Christ idea, of the Christ child, of the continuity of individual experience, and that what is being brought forth is a product not of man, but of God. And you'll see the difference, just as you will see the difference the moment you become imbued with this spiritual truth, even though your children were not conceived or even up to now governed with spiritual truth. Watch the change that you can bring about in your children, even in the grown ones, when you begin to live your life with your mind so imbued with truth, with spiritual truth, that you don't look on your children as if they were a personal possession, but understand that they have come forth out of the mind of God, out of the soul of God, for God's purpose, and set them free in the Spirit, and you'll begin to see a change in them very, very quickly, or slowly, regarding as may be governed by their immediate circumstances, but eventually you'll find the members of your household being spiritually governed instead of carnally governed. Now, remember though, you are not to believe for a minute that God is on the field until you yourself, in your meditation, have become still. Join me now. Become still. Now give up your desires, even your desire for God. Don't even have that. Let nothing come between us and our realization. We will not desire God, we will not desire good in any form, nor will we desire to be rid of anything, or overcome or destroy anything. in all this holy mountain, we'll just sit here in peace. And in our contemplation, if we can do nothing else, we look out there at the weather and realize that we can do nothing about it but behold it. We are not the creators of weather. We're not the maintainers or sustainers of weather. We have no desire to change it, alter it, or improve it. We are witnesses. And so let us witness God's weather. If it seems bad to us, remember that we put that word bad on it. Weather can't be good and weather can't be bad. Weather can only be weather. So let's have no sword, no desire to stop it, change it. Just be a witness to the weather that God gives. I bear witness to God's grace. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And you see, you feel it, and then you stop, and then you go on about your business. Now you can trust, because having felt that realization, that presence, God is on the field. Only remember, this must be renewed in us a dozen times a day or more, until the day comes when it isn't just from period to period, but when it's a continuing experience around the clock, when you're virtually never out of the mood in which you are in this moment. And that day does come. No matter what the outer circumstances are, no matter what the news is, no matter what's going on, inwardly you are in a rhythm that nothing in the outer circumstance upsets or destroys or annoys. And that is the infinite way. Well, that is it for tonight. And we'll see you tomorrow night at the same time. And remember that those who would like to come out and visit with us tomorrow afternoon, come between 1 and 3. We'll be happy to see you and show you our weather even when it's raining.